Counter-Strike 2 is one of the strangest sequels ever made, because Valve didn't release it alongside CSGO, they replaced CSGO with it, and almost 3 years later, the question isn't whether Counter-Strike 2 is alive, it obviously is. The question is what Valve is actually trying to build, a better Counter-Strike or a better marketplace, because Valve is still updating this game. Cash is back, Premier keeps getting new seasons, the bomb has been reworked, community maps are rotating through matchmaking. There have been major animation, networking, and weapon changes, but whenever Valve releases something substantial, monetization somehow finds its way into the center of the announcement, and sometimes monetization is the entire announcement. Valve's 3 most notable content releases since late 2025 were the Genesis Collection, the Death Hunt Collection, and Season 5, which was literally titled Season 5, Armory, and more. And while I was finishing the script, Valve released another new series of major stickers, and the timing just couldn't feel more personal. The important part is that Counter-Strike 2 didn't start from zero. Valve officially described it as a free upgrade to CSGO, and when it launched in September 2023, it took CSGO's place on Steam. Even today, the store page still uses the original 2012 release date, and Steam has also warned users that every review posted before September 2023 was actually written for global offensive. CS2 inherited CSGO's player base, its inventory system, professional scene, and market, and most importantly, its expectations. That means Valve wasn't simply building a promising new game, it was replacing one of the most complete competitive shooters ever made. And at launch, that replacement was noticeably smaller. Modes including Arms Race and Danger Zone removed, all CSGO's achievements were basically gone, maps and community features were missing. Arms Race eventually returned, and CS2 has continued recovering and rebuilding parts of what the game lost, but the game Valve removed had spent more than a decade becoming complete, and CS2 might have had better smokes, but CSGO had more Counter-Strike. To be fair, CS2 is not just the worst version of Counter-Strike. Source 2 brought major visual improvements, dynamic smoke grenades, upgraded workshop tools, new map making possibilities, better lighting, and proper global rating system through Premier. Most players reviewing it today are still positive. At the time of the writing, 79% of Steam reviews from the previous 30 days recommend this game, and it's still lower than the English score of 86%, but that's also because those reviews include years of CSGO compared, and the comparison is far from clean. So this isn't a video claiming CS2 is dead, it's not. And Valve isn't doing nothing. The argument will be satisfying, but it will also be wrong. The issue isn't keys, stickers, agents, operation passes, and one of the largest virtual item economies ever created, if you don't take into account also the gambling sites that were created because of it. Valve has been selling colorful pictures of guns for a very long time, and the difference is what used to come alongside them. Take Operation Riptide. It had a paid pass and plenty of cosmetic rewards, but it also introduced weekly missions, new mission types, new maps, private premier queues, shorter competitive matches, team deathmatch, free-for-all deathmatch, and changes to existing modes. It wasn't monetized content. It was monetized content, but it was still content. The final CSGO operation ended in February 2022, meaning Valve had already started slowing down before CS2 arrived. Nostalgia makes it easy to remember Global Offensive as an endless stream of operations and new content, which really wasn't the case. But CS2 was supposed to create a stronger foundation for the future. Instead, Valve found a different use for repeatable progression. In October 2024, Valve released the Armory. It introduced more than 100 new cosmetic items, 3 weapon collections, a new case, stickers, and the first weapon charms. Players could purchase the Armory Pass, activate it, earn credits by gaining XP, and exchange those for items. And unlike an operation, there were no narrative missions, no new campaign, no new game modes to tie to the past, no weekly challenges asking players to experience Counter-Strike differently. You paid for permission to grind currency, which you then exchange for cosmetics. In other words, Valve separated the progression system of an operation from the content that once made the progression interesting. The Armory gave players another reason to keep playing, but the reward of playing Counter-Strike was no longer more Counter-Strike, it was just access to another product. And some players liked the charms and collections, others described the update as a cash grab and questioned why a game still missing features from Global Offensive was receiving an entirely new storefront. One of the more sarcastic reactions called it the exact update everyone wanted, and honestly that sentence could serve as the community's unofficial slogan for half of CS2's history. And then in September 2025, Valve introduced the Genesis Collection. 17 community-made finishes distributed through a new item called the Genesis Uplink Terminal. Instead of paying to open a traditional case, where you would use the case in the key and you would immediately receive a random skin, the terminal presented a sequence of random purchase offers, which is just a fancy way of saying that you could reject each offer and move to the next one. But once you declined it, it was gone. And if the terminal offered something valuable, the asking price could climb into the hundreds or even thousands. Valve could manage to create something that wasn't quite a loot box, but somehow still contained randomness, pressure, scarcity, and the possibility of spending a ridiculous amount of money. It felt less like opening a case and more like negotiating with a slot machine. The most accurate community reaction may have been Valve will literally reinvent the gambling industry before adding a random fun game mode. And that quote is funny because it is exaggerated, but it works because it also feels believable. And again, the Genesis update wasn't completely empty. Valve also included improvements to shooting consistency and other technical changes. That distinction matters, but nobody remembers the update as a subject consistency patch. They remember the terminal because that was the headline feature. 6 months later, Valve released the Dead Hand collection, and that's another 17 new weapon finishes to 22 new glove designs, the first major patch of new glove designs in years. And once again, they were distributed through a terminal. The skins themselves were received pretty well. Some of them looked genuinely fantastic. That's what made the reaction so revealing. One Reddit user described being excited by the skins and gloves until they realized the collection used another terminal. Their reaction ended with, "Then I saw it, available in the Dead Hand terminal. Oh dear." And that isn't a player rejecting cosmetics, it is a player who liked the content and disliked how Valve chose to sell it. And what came with this major update? A pixel gap fix on Dust 2, and that was essentially it. A new collection, 22 gloves, another monetization system, and one very unfortunate pixel gap finally met its end. Valve can deliver cosmetic collections without meaningful gameplay content, and what it rarely delivers is meaningful content without also finding a way to attach a cosmetic economy to it. Then came Season 5 in July 2026, and this is where the argument becomes more complicated. Cash returned to the active duty pool, overpass was removed, Valve redesigned C4 explosion damage and some community maps and matchmaking. The engine was updated, scripting was improved, and some other changes as well. So real content. So this is a real update, but it also introduced new weapon collections and new sticker collections with the Armory, and Valve didn't hide that. The official title was Season 5 Armory and more. Not Season 5 and the Return of Cash, or not Season 5 and the new C4 system. Armory came second in the title, and everything else became more. The reaction was mixed, and some players praised improved performance and useful inventory changes. Others responded with comments like mid or wow or cosmetics. These comments are also not scientific evidence, community opinion. Steam comments are barely scientific evidence of human civilization, but they capture the exhaustion that surrounds every CS2 announcement. Players are no longer asking what Valve added, they're immediately searching for how Valve intends to monetize it. And from Valve's perspective, why would they change this? Counter-Strike doesn't need a constant stream of cinematic seasons to remain relevant. Its core gameplay is almost impossible to replace. Its esports scene creates permanent visibility, and its skin economy gives players financial and emotional reasons to stay invested. And every new cosmetic doesn't just create one sale, it enters an ecosystem of trading, speculation, collecting, and transaction fees. A collection can be made larger from community submissions, sold through an existing system, and traded repeatedly afterwards. One expands the game and the other expands the economy, and guess which one is easier to repeat. And CS2 is not abandoned. In some ways that would be easier to understand. It is actively maintained, technically improved, and commercially optimized, but CSGO often felt like a game that happened to contain an economy. CS2 increasingly feels like an economy that just happens to contain a game. Valve has improved the shooting, it has rebuilt animations, brought back trading cash, it created better smokes, better map tools, and a modern technical foundation. But 3 years after a blazing global offensive, CS2 still struggles to match the scene of variety. The last CSGO operation combined monetization with missions, modes, and a new ways to play. The Armory capped the monetization and turned the rest into a storefront. The Genesis terminal created a new way to sell skins, and the Dead Hand repeated it. Season 5 finally delivered meaningful gameplay content and still made Armory one of its main attractions. And Valve's latest announcement were stickers. The problem isn't that skins exist. Skins help Counter-Strike grow, founded its esports ecosystem, and became part of the game's identity. The problem is that Valve appears far more ambitious when inventing new ways to sell Counter-Strike than when imagining ways for us to play it.